with Matt Proshka. He's a programmatic advertising director for the New York Times. Maybe you can give us the state of affairs with video at the New York Times. How are you guys selling it now? Do you guys have a lot of volume? You know, you guys are a traditional newspaper company, and then where you're headed maybe in this avenue?
Yep. So status as of mid-September, we're 6 months into Rebecca Howard's stint. She's our general manager of video, who joined us from AOL, old colleague of mine by coincidence. And so she reports to Jill Abramson, our editor-in-chief, and also to Denise Warren, our head of digital products. So her job is to organically and through syndication and other partnerships grow our overall video supply. We have the classic publisher challenge where we're leaving money on the table.
If you had more stuff, you could sell it, in other words?
For sure, for sure. And so, how can we leverage our own O&O property along with the syndication networks that are available out there to be able to control the inventory but still distribute our content more aggressively out there to where everyone else is already consuming video, and then leveraging programmatic from a buying standpoint to help our advertisers. So we're racing to get a video audience extension product out that'll allow us to leverage the 50 million global uniques we've got and be able to help our advertisers find those folks in other appropriate safe environments and pre-roll.
Why do you guys not have enough volume? Is it simply because it's a big organization that was traditionally had a lot of print journalists, and it just takes a while to get everybody producing a lot of video? Is it
a little bit?
The consumers have to get used to you guys being a video destination?
Yeah, I mean we're producing more video than a lot of folks know about. So part of that is communication with the market. Part of that is having enough to sell and being able to generate that. And so a lot of it, again, the reason why Rebecca is part of the editorial team is that it's taking someone who's been an award-winning journalist doing things a certain way for more than 2 decades and being able to say, can we take that story that would normally go text with photo and be released at whatever time online and in print, and say either having that journalist as talent or finding someone else as talent, because not everybody is comfortable or wanting to do that, but being able to leverage the speed and dynamic of being able to cut up that piece with B-roll, for example, and do a quick 90-second and put a 15 pre-roll in front of that and have that go out into our supply as well. So I think we've made some I think pretty good moves around the way we package video overall in our email offerings. When Today's Headlines comes out, there's a good section of video now happening. We're looking to integrate it more and more into every single story that we do. And then we've announced publicly as part of our last quarterly earnings, we've got a major redesign coming in January, and video certainly will be showcased a lot more there.
Is it, have you guys found success in just doing video as news happens on the fly? Do you need to have a schedule? Or do you need to have every day at noon we've got the Times talks about whatever? Like what have you found?
Yeah, easier for Rebecca or for Jill to speak to that, I would say. Yeah. But definitely we're trying new formats. I don't think we're going, you haven't seen us announce something, full Monty and doing like a HuffPo Live or something like that. But certainly leveraging our studio space and our great talent to be able to create more content, whether it's David Carr doing a lot of his good 3-minute pieces, or CJ Chivers, who's our top amazing award-winning reporter in the Middle East, covering Syria and a lot of crazy places. Having him be able to package things. I mean, he did a great talk internally where he was showing how his world has changed over the last few years, leveraging video, showing the digital camera and the battery and the satellite and just everything that it's part of his world. Kind of a far cry from the old notebook and pen from back in the day. So yeah, I mean, organically, it's happening across the entire company very aggressively.
Right. When you talk about audience extension for video, are you talking about packaging video advertising with a bunch of other stuff, or are you talking about literally getting your video all over the web and getting more viewership outside of the Times borders?
Yeah, both. So if you think of a bullseye analogy where let's say our automotive section pre-roll would be the red dot of the bullseye, right? Not as much inventory, very strong CPM, very good in-context environment there. And then imagine the white ring around that being your classic behavioral targeting. We call it the NewYorkTimes.com audience extension. So finding people that were in automotive and then serving pre-roll perhaps in other areas of the site. But they were just reading that article about the SUV, let's say. Right. And then the blue ring being the New York Times network audience extension, and going and taking that same great audience of 2 million people or what have you, and then finding it across the entire web.
So you speak to this challenge, right? Of the, you need more volume. There's a healthy, strong market for your video. again, I'll ask you the question, why mess with programmatic when people associate that with you're going to cheapen it, you're going to throw your video out into exchanges and get it depress your pricing? Like, what's your urgency, dude?
Sure. We haven't seen the pressure pricing as we just gotten started in display. We're set up a little differently than a lot of other publishers in that, similar to Hearst, where they've successfully started to organize programmatic sales with ad ops, we actually have programmatic sales with sales. So we don't have a channel conflict because it's the same salesperson that calls on the Samsung client, sells them conferences, print, and digital. So programmatic really shouldn't be any different. So when you do that and then you realize that it's apples and oranges, the reason why it's so cheap is because it's a much more simplified product. It's definitely non-guaranteed, as everybody knows today on most platforms, but it's also standardized units. It's none of the custom stuff. So the difference between a $38 CPM through an insertion order and a $6 CPM programmatic preferred, using our display exchange partner Google's terminology, preferred with a capital P. The reason those are that way is not because we're suddenly trying to just get as much revenue as possible and who cares about the CPM. It's because it's two very, very different things and very different objectives for an advertiser. So in pre-roll in the autos section while someone's there, with a strong share of voice, would be valued differently and priced differently than, say, someone who's finding the automotive audience that we know is first party through our Crux DMP partnership, let's say, and then being able to find them either throughout the rest of our site or elsewhere.
When you talk about, you just mentioned your Crux partnership, the idea that, I wonder how big the market is for, and then on the display space, a big driver for private exchanges is buyers want to cherry pick audience and use a lot of data, right? I don't have a sense of how big that is in video right now, because you think of video as brand advertising, less data-driven ROI, I think. But how much of a marketplace is there for that kind of stuff?
It's growing. Not as much certainly in display. I think a lot of our friends at TubeMogul or other buying platforms would be able to give some good stats on that. But and Spot Exchange, I'm sure, sees a lot of that buying activity on the demand side. But yeah, because historically video has been for brand awareness objectives, and display and programmatic started with a lot of DR categories like retail and finance and travel and EDU and whatnot. There's been sort of a theory that the two can't mix together. I think if you look at what Kellogg's is doing in brand, I mean, Bob Arnold is practically the poster child for programmatic being solid in brand. Allstate and others have followed suit, and finding that it can work in display, why couldn't that work also in video? So it's just leveraging, as Mike had said earlier, the efficiencies around the speed of the transactional friction reduction and the efficiency around audience targeting. And so if you can buy the same way programmatically, it doesn't mean you suddenly have to drop your CPM like crazy, because you can set floors. There are some controls. You can communicate that, hey, this is actually the New York Times or Hearst or other top publishers, and say, oh, but there's first-party data behind this, and there's an auction, and here's where we think the fair value should start, and the market will ultimately dictate that. But when you get more folks, as Mike alluded to, buying consistently and playing leapfrog like everybody has in search for 16, 17 years or so, that's worked pretty well for the publishers, and you get liquidity on both sides, then pricing should follow suit and be fair for everybody.
So but when you're talking about selling this way, though, you're not gonna. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it doesn't sound like you're gonna take Times Video and put it on wide open exchanges. You want to have some parameters. How is it gonna roll out?
Very carefully. We understandably, a lot of the reasons why publishers are afraid of cheap CPMs is because historically it was just kind of flung out in the open. I use this analogy inside and outside the company all the time. Imagine if we put a store on Fifth Avenue here in New York, and we didn't label it the New York Times store. It was just store of stuff. And instead of J. Crew or other great places where all the clothes are folded neatly on the shelves and you know where the shirts are and the chinos and the whole deal, all the clothes are just thrown in one giant cardboard box, unfolded, no price tags, no labels or anything. And instead of a cash register, there's an honor box. And if you could please make a donation, that would be great. That's kind of what the open exchange is today. And a lot of publishers, understandably, have said, gee, that business isn't for me. Gosh, those are low CPMs. Well, yeah, because it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. If you don't label things appropriately, you don't put a sign on the front of the door and say who you are. And if you're blind to buyers and sellers, and it takes a lot of analytical work to dive around in the cardboard box and go, oh, that's the New York Times, holy cow. Make a screenshot of that. Tell everybody we just found the New York Times on the open exchange. That really isn't the way we want to do business, not because we want to block everybody, but just we think our audience has a lot of value. We think our editorial environment obviously has strong value, and so for us, when we start doing video programmatically, it'll be very transparent, very labeled, very careful in terms of who we work with. We've done a number of good preferred deals, and our pipeline for programmatic preferred direct deals is growing every day as folks realize that, oh, I can get a lot of the same things I'm getting through an insertion order, but just the speed of being able to transact through a trading desk, and also then leverage audience targeting that the Times is now helping me get.
Right.